Welcome to the STS podcast. I got my extra special guest, Lil Bianchi. Thank you so much for joining. Did I pronounce your last name right, by the way?
It's Bianchi. In
Yeah.
Italian, CH is a K.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining, man. It's an honor to have the Dawn of South African powerlifting with us today.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here. It's actually quite refreshing to talk on a South African podcast.
It is. I find like especially right now, the South African powerlifting scene, I think, is approaching its golden era. Like, we're really starting to see some really competitive, a competitive platform of competitive nature. A lot of athletes coming up into the global scene. So I figured, like, we're missing a gap. Like, we gotta have athlete voices, like sharing their experiences, sharing their knowledge, and further growing the sport.
Yeah, you've absolutely tapped into this at the exact right time.
It's my superpower. I lay low until the right moment, and I'm like, okay, it's my time to shine. My time to shine. But tell me, like, how I've always wanted to ask you, how did you get the nickname the Dawn? Like, where did that start?
Sure. So it actually goes all the way back to about 2014 when I took my first team of athletes to a meet here in Durban. It was actually Iron Gladiators 2014. It was the second Iron Gladiators that had ever been held. And I had quite a big team. It was about 12 or 14 athletes, predominantly men. I think I had one or two women. And being this 50-kilo little Italian feisty, like girl in control, one of the athletes turned around when I was trying to get everyone's attention and just said, guys, the Don is talking. And it just kind of stuck from there. It really is. It's mostly because of my fiery Italian personality, and also, well, the Don is Italian. So it's stuck. It's been part of me ever since. And I kind of like have a bit of hate for it at the same time, because it's quite like I'm saying too much for myself. You know what I mean? The Don is like the boss. Like, who am I? You know, but it kind of just stuck and I ran with it. So it is what it is.
I think that's a little imposter syndrome creeping up there. Like, you've done your dues. You have done your dues. Like, especially like on that note, like how does someone, like, because typically, like, people, especially outsiders, would think, powerlifting must be a very ego-driven sport. You have these really testosterone-filled, muscular men dominating it. Like, how does a 50-kilogram female end up being a coach of such, like, large male human beings? Like, where did this all start?
Look, it was really, really difficult, and probably one of the biggest barriers to entry I had when I started. Again, 50-kilo woman. And, my whole approach to it is that I have an educational background. I've worked in strength and conditioning for many years. I got into the world of powerlifting in 2013. So I have been in powerlifting for many years. But back when I started venturing into the sport, like I said, it was a very hard barrier to entry. And I looked at this and I thought, okay, what do I need to do? I need to find a big male with absolutely no experience in the strength world and turn him into an elite athlete. And from that, I will then get the credibility I need, because at the end of the day, when it comes to coaching or to strength and human movements, it really just comes down to education and knowledge. It's not about the size. It's got nothing to do, with what I am as a person. And at first I had a lot of big names in powerlifting in this country turn around and go, what does she know about having 400 kilos on her back? And of course, that's the attitude I'm going to get, until I started really using my athletes to do the talking for me. And Maddie LaRue was actually the athlete that I found in a Virgin Active in Johannesburg one day, had a conversation about powerlifting, no experience. He could barely squat, deadlift, or bench. He was a typical gym boy, and I thought, like, this is a guy that I can really use. He's got a good attitude. He's driven. He's hungry. This is the guy I'm going to use to turn elite. And I did exactly that. And then, from then it just skyrocketed, because I've been able to take a multitude of athletes from nothing to elite. And the majority of my athlete base is male and are all over 100 kilos.
It's actually like, and you're right. Like, your portfolio of athletes actually does speak for itself. Like, you've turned, like, I'm sure you've kept count, like, as a coach, like, how many, like, national champions, how many world records, how many national records that you and OTG have managed to collect over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are really important numbers and important data for me to collect. So that is something that I keep close to my heart. And again, I really just let that do the talking for me. You know, I can go on about what I've achieved as an athlete, but it's irrelevant. Nobody really cares what I've done. It's what my team's doing and what they're continuously doing on every platform they get onto.
But like, not to downplay your own athletic prowess, like you as an individual, you as an athlete have also achieved a considerable level of success as well. Like you were recently invited to Elite Raw this many years out of the last time you competed. I mean that says something.
Yeah. It's actually my third invite to Elite Raw. I competed at the very first Elite Raw back in 2016, which, you know, I've competed on a lot of international platforms. I've competed all over the world. I've competed a lot. And I have to say that Elite Raw 2016, Dan hosted it with Tristan O'Brien at, can't remember the name of that club in Pretoria, but it was just, the atmosphere was euphoric. And to this day, it's one of the best meets I've ever competed in. I hope to compete on an Elite Raw platform again. But yeah, it's a really special competition. It really, really is.
Now tell me, like you've taken a step back from competing yourself. Like, is there any like if you want to compete at Elite Raw again, is like are we going to be lucky enough to see it happen this year? Are you still biding your time? Like, what's the plan?
So I'll be honest, you know, I'm very hungry for the competition. You're an athlete, you know what it's like on that day. We absolutely live for that day. Those 9 minutes that we are on the platform, we work all year for. I love it. I miss it. I crave it. But I do have a very, very big athlete base right now, and I am putting a lot of my energy into them. Well, all of my energy. Elite Raw, I haven't either confirmed nor denied the invite yet. You know, I hate to bring this up, but as you know, we very unfortunately lost Eddie Badbalia last month, and he was my assistant strength and conditioning coach at OCG. He's been an athlete of mine for 5 years and someone I have a close relationship with. And at Iron Gladiators now in November, I'd flown him out from Cape Town to come and handle my team for me to see what his capabilities are, because I've never not been behind my athletes at a meet. Never, not even once. And I needed to know that I had someone trustworthy, reliable, and a strong partner that I could hand the reins over to. And Eddie just absolutely blew me away. He handled it like an absolute pro. I was so confident. I thought, right, 2023 is going to be a big thing for our team, because now there's two of us with a lot of knowledge. And yeah, unfortunately, we very suddenly lost him. So it's kind of changed the game a lot for me this year, because going into Elite Raw also, for me, it would be quite selfish for me to get up on the platform and say to my athletes, look, I want to do Iron Gladiators this year, so you can't. Because I cannot get onto a platform and share it with, you know, when we go into competition, there's often over 20 of us in the team. I cannot coach a team and put out my best performance. And because the athlete that I am, there's no fucking ways I'm stepping up on a platform just to put out subpar numbers. It's not what I work for. You know, I'm going to admit, even I've got ego. You know what I mean? And you and the bear and your little thing going between the two of you, you really do understand what I mean by that. Like, there's no stepping up without putting out your best. So I'm prepared to put my athletic career on the back seat until, you know, I can fill Eddie's role again.
I totally hear you, and like rest in peace to Eddie. Like that was a massive blow to not only OTG but the South African powerlifting community as a whole. Like I think there's not a single person who hasn't been in the game long enough who has like met Eddie, competed with him, who didn't feel that one. So yeah, I wanted to just share my condolences to you, his family on that one. That was a really tough blow. And along that, like I totally hear what you're saying about like being behind your athletes, because like I've in the past, I had quite a large team compete with me at nationals. I think 2017, 2018. It was like just before COVID, and the whole competing and coaching thing. Like I've done it a couple times. I do not recommend it. You're going to drop the ball massively on one of those fronts. It tends to be on you as an athlete. Like it tends to be a little better because the predominant of my athletes tend to be female. So at nationals level, they tend to compete the day before, which helped. But I found like that by the end of day one of nationals, I was wrecked, as if I competed. Right. So I'm like, next day, I'm like, I don't actually want to put 300 kilos on my back and squat. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that. It's really difficult to be coach and athlete on the same day.
And I have, like you said, I have really achieved a lot in my career. I've been competing. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but I've been competing since 2013. It's a long career. Like I said, I've completed it. I've competed at 4 world championships. I've been invited to some really big elite meets internationally. I feel like what is another, another national record, another world record? What does it actually mean? I don't really feel like I need the credibility as a coach because I get one more world record. I'm getting so much from seeing my athletes achieve those things and living vicariously through them that I'm prepared to, put my chucks aside and just let them run with it.
Yeah, I totally understand that feeling. Like, especially when you've worked with someone for the long haul, you know all their highs, their lows, how much it took to get there. And as an athlete experiencing it yourself, you know exactly what the feeling of like success of someone else feels like. So I've always said, like, I'm fortunate. It's like I'm currently in like multiple different powerlifting careers because like I can celebrate my own. I can celebrate each of my athletes individually, and like each of them gives its own like little high. So like as a coach responsible for athletes, you're in like a unique position where you can enjoy the sport from like multiple different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. We can live this sport forever, long after we decide to retire, and that's what's amazing about it.
Yeah. But I find I don't know, like I love coaching. I'm not quite where you are yet, where I'm ready to like give up myself as an athlete, because unlike you, I still feel like there's so much more I can still do. There's so much more I still want to give. So I am finding that balance between the two is very challenging. Like, for instance, like on my off days, I'm at the gym, I'm helping to spot, I'm helping to wrap knees, knowing full well that the extra 2 hours sleep, if I could have gotten it, would have translated better to the squat session I'm doing tomorrow. So it's like it's a very, very challenging thing being in charge of other people's careers, because like the decisions you make can affect how they perform, their interpretation of the sport, how they experience it. Have you found there been any situations in your career where it's like you like either had to make a really tough call or things weren't going right, like where you were tested as a coach?
Yeah, back in 2018, we went, was it 2018? It was 2017, we went to the Czech Republic. I took about 8 athletes with me to World Champs. And this is like quite a controversial topic, but I'll bring it up anyways. Donovan Hawkey and Mo Dungle went head-to-head in the 100 kg class. And Donovan had beaten Mo by 0.5 on his deadlift. So he broke a world record by 0.5. And what happened at prize giving is that they actually awarded Donovan 3rd place on the podium. And without actually realizing, obviously, any 0.5s of a record don't get counted towards a total. So Mo should have been awarded that, but we didn't realize it at the time. And, a lot of people came down on me as a coach for not taking responsibility in that moment and not doing anything about it. But you kind of just get lost in the moment, and we didn't realize what had happened with the score. It reflected terribly on me as a coach, because that is something I am responsible for. I need to be awake to all these moments. But first time I take an athlete like Donovan to Worlds, he gets up on the podium, like we got lost in that moment.
Yeah.
So it was difficult. That was hard. It was a wrong call on my side. I just wasn't paying attention, And these things stick with you forever. These things are still brought up to me, But you live and you learn, and it's made me focus on the really little things at every competition that a lot of people aren't thinking about, purely because as a coach, as a businesswoman, the smallest things can affect you.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because also at the international level, you're just expecting that the organizers and all that are going to be like meticulous with that sort of thing. You don't expect those kind of minute mistakes to creep in. So I can understand being in the moment, like totally gets lost.
To add insult to injury, I'm also a GPC international referee. So I need to know about this. You know what I mean? Like, it's part of your job to know. So I just fucked up completely, and I take full ownership for that. It is what it is.
Were you able to like correct it after the fact, in terms of like on paper who the winner was and all that? Or
everything was corrected afterwards, but it doesn't matter then, because when athletes get up on the podium, the crowd sees what the crowd sees.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it sucked for Mo. It really, really did. It was a shit position for him to be in. He never got to go up there and receive that award. And I always feel shit about it. But like I said, like, you know, these things happen and kind of at the time they just, yeah, it was a fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah. I find I've had moments like that, especially earlier in my career where it's like because like any professional, like you have to start somewhere. You have to be a beginner at some point. So it's always like those tiny mistakes that you reflect on years later, where it's like I shouldn't beat myself up over that, but the mistakes you make don't affect you actually. They affect other people. They affect the athletes you're working with. So you are in a very like tough position as a coach, especially with the number of high level athletes you work with.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, if there's any advice I can give to any coach and whoever's listening, you know, as a coach, you need to be able to take accountability. And sometimes we don't ask the right questions, or we don't reach out to people, or we don't take responsibility to situations because there's a lot of ego involved, or we have a lot of pride. But I think like in a situation like this, you just need to own your mistakes, and you land up earning a lot more respect that way than, you know, trying to make excuses for what you did.
I mean, anyone who's really walked the walk would understand. Like, listen, at the end of the day, everyone's human. Like, there's no coach without a major mistake you could point out at some point in their career. So, like, it sucks when it happens, but c'est la vie.
Yeah, c'est la vie.
So tell me, like how challenging is it? I know after COVID and all that, you had to close down your actual OTG facility. You've gone fully online. Like how has that transition been?
So it really was difficult. You know, we had to make a decision. Obviously, back then, Scott and I were still married, and the day that OTG closed, it was the 27th of March, 2020. We got home, we sat at the dinner table. We opened a bottle of wine and we said, right, we are not going to sit here and wait for the government to dictate when we can start earning an income. We need to start acting now. We always wanted to go online because within a gym, you have the ability to grow your business, but you don't really have the ability to scale it. You can only have so much in the gym. So it was something we were always interested in doing, but you spend so much time working in your business when you have a big facility that you don't have enough time to spare to work on your business and the growth and scale of your business. By that Monday, we had invested in some international coaches that cost us an arm and a leg, who would help us transition our business from being a bricks and mortar facility to online. Now, you know, a lot of personal trainers come to me and they say, you know, Lil, how did you do it online? Can you give us some advice? There's two things to know, you know, and you will know this yourself because I believe you work across both spectrums. They are two completely different businesses. Yeah. Working in a gym and running a business like that versus going online is a completely different challenge. You know, I had 7 years at OTG, so I had a lot of experience within the facility, but now suddenly going online, different business, different model, different approach, you're in a whole new world. The competition is now global. I'm not fighting with the strength gym down the road or the CrossFit down the road for clients. I'm now going up against the rest of the world. So yeah, we invested a lot of money, and I'm always one of those businesswomen who say that you got to spend money to make money. We got a return on our investment within 3 months, and by the time the gyms had opened in August that year, we had already, you know, doubled our capacity and doubled our income. We thought, do we reopen this facility? What would it mean to OTG to reopen it? People are going to miss the community, the space, the establishment, the institution that it was, because we had been around for so long. But I also need to think about myself. I'm going into my 40s. You know, I'm 38 years old. Am I going to be going to that gym at 5 o'clock in the morning for the next 10 years? You know, and we decided not to reopen, which meant that I lost 95% of our clientele. You know, people they wanted to go to OTG, and if they couldn't come to OTG, they weren't willing to go online because there's 100 other gyms here in Durban for them to choose from. So it was a difficult challenge. This year we celebrate 3 years of being online, and you know, with a business, you always kind of you need to break that 3-year mark. If you don't make it in 3 years, you're not going to make it. You're buried. So July this year will be 3 years online. Managed to turn it around. It's been incredible. And yeah, I will never open a gym again. I don't think I would have the capability of doing what I am able to do now if I didn't have the credibility of what I built at OTG. You know, you also need to have a lot of in-person coaching experience before you can go online, because again, it's a completely different ball game. But yeah, I walked that road, I closed that chapter, and I'm on a whole new path now. And it's really been incredible. It's just being online is just like our biggest goal for 2023 is really to just increase our global footprint. And I'm not in a hurry to do anything. You know, it took me 10 years, the 3 years before I opened OCG, to there's no such thing as an overnight success. So I'm here for the long haul. I'm stacking the chips slowly. I'm not in any hurry to get this going or grow this massive brand in a hurry. I'm just enjoying the process.
No, that's an incredible story of perseverance, especially taking the risk of something that was successful, and then like taking the risk of like, you can either like you can go at this path, and like it can turn into a lot more than what you originally doing could ever be, or it could blow up in your face and you actually ruin what was a perfectly working, functioning business. But
I have absolutely no digital experience. What do I know about I mean, besides the coaching, that's what I do. I'm good at that. But everything else, I am shit at. Like, I get a new iPhone, I've got to sit down with a specialist for an hour talking me through how to, you know, update my apps, let alone run a digital business. So it was literally diving off a mountain.
Yeah, I find with me the biggest challenge transitioning, because I'm like half and half for the most part, mostly online, but still brick and mortar. But I find the biggest part for me is I'm not a social media person by nature. Like, I'm a very I live in the moment, and if something cool is happening, I'm like living through it, and then after the fact, I'm like, shit, I should have taken a picture of that or something. Like, golden opportunity gone begging. So I find having to go against my own natural inclination, like I find for me actually, like on a semi-tangent, is I'm actually a very introverted person. So like me by myself, not speaking a word is me in my happy place. So actually having to like communicate and be articulate, and that's me already. It's already me going against like what I feel like doing most of the time. So having to now, not only do I have to do that when people are around me, I have to like do that constantly online also. It is an adjustment. Some people thrive on it, some people not so much, but it is a totally different sphere.
But it's a necessity.
I do find something that irks me is I do feel like, similar to what you said now, like a lot of the foundation of coaching someone and like really learning how to do it properly is done in person. Like on in-person foundation is so much better than someone who's just started online. But I find, especially now that the fitness industry has grown into what it is, there are a lot of people who like get their 1-year certificate from ETA or whatever it is, and the very next year they're an online specialist. And I'm like, that grinds my gears a little bit. Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's very frustrating. Like I said, you know, when these personal trainers do approach me and say, how do you do it? My initial response is always, you need to spend time in the gutter, my friend. You've got to do the hard yards. You've got to work in person with people, because when it comes to going online, if you don't have the ability to communicate and communicate well, you're going to bury yourself. So you need to understand human movement really well in person. You need to have years behind you, because you've now got to communicate human movements to someone who has no idea how to do a body weight squat. Like, where are you going to start if you haven't worked with someone in person?
Yeah. And now it's like there's so many athletes I'm working with now where, you know, like eventually we come right. But like the initial period of, okay, cool, I need to teach you how to squat. These are the cues. This is what you should look at. Here are a couple of videos you should look at. Okay, go. They send a video back, and I'm like, if I was in person with you, 1 minute of just touching you and cueing you, you'd get this right. But now it's going to take 3 or 4 sessions because I'm having to like give you verbal and written cues the whole time, as opposed to being there in person. Like it's part of that completely different ballgame.
Yeah. However, on the complete opposite end of that spectrum, what I really like about online is that when you're standing with someone in the gym and they deadlift, they squat, it's gone in 3 seconds, right? That moment is gone. You may see slight like internal rotation at the hip, but you may not pick up on everything else. So now you have this ability to slow everything down, especially when you're working with, you know, someone who's been lifting for a very long time and they're not making a lot of error. And by changing something, just making them 1% better can make them substantially better in their sport. You now have the ability to really fine tune that. So yeah, I like that online coaching.
I find you're 100% right, and I find that's been part of my like my recent sort of success in the sport was also like getting David as a coach and having someone with an objective eye who doesn't care about my biases and all that see those minute little things and be like, listen, do you realize you have a tendency to do A, B, and C? If we correct that,
Yeah.
it's going to have long-term benefits. So I find like where are you on the like, because you get a lot of people in the sport who like want to train themselves. It's like, listen, like why do I need a coach for? Like I got YouTube, I got Instagram.
I have a very strong opinion about this because coaches need coaches. And the problem is when you're coaching yourself, you only do the shit that you're good at. You don't do the shit that you're weak at. You don't do the shit that you suck at. You need another set of eyes. I mean, I've been with my coach for going on 6 years now. You know, obviously he's taken me from nothing to where I am right now. And I look at a lot of people. Look, I think it's quite different if you're competing at a higher level. The necessity of a coach and the need for a coach is much more than if you're just starting out in the sport. You know, you're just starting out in powerlifting. If you want to get a good program from someone and build a base, I think you can do it. But as for coaches, if coaches are coaches, it's because they either are high level or they are people with a lot of knowledge. They are the first people that need coaches. They absolutely need that, like you say, an objective view. They need another set of eyes on them. And it's also really nice to have that that critique constantly. You always want to better yourself and improve yourself. And your coach becomes a mentor to you as well. So you deliver a lot from their coaching onto your athletes. Otherwise, how are you really growing as an individual? You know, I mean, my coach has a coach and he's one of the best coaches in the world. So like if he can have a coach, then who are you, Joe from accounts, who's coaching 3 people in your garage gym and you don't have a coach? Like, you know what I mean?
My whole thing, I find like powerlifting and like barbell sports are the only sports where people don't make that connection. It's like you take every other sport, like Tiger Woods, best golfer in the world, has a coach. You get Sia Khaleesi, one of the best rugby captains in the world. There's a coach in charge of the team. He doesn't coach the team himself. They put someone else in charge there. So in every other sport, at any high level, a coach is the person directing the athlete or athletes on which direction to go. And suddenly when it's like, put a barbell in their hands, like, this is simple enough. I can do it myself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No. I feel strongly about that.
But like in your opinion, like what makes a good coach? Like I've always had to simplify my broad views on it. I've always think a coach has to have at least 2 of 3 things. They need to either themselves have achieved a certain level of success in what they're coaching, be academically trained and knowledgeable in what they're coaching, and have a body of work, a body of evidence, athletes they've worked with who have achieved a certain level of success. And I'm like, if you have 2 out of 3 of those, I've always felt like that makes a good coach. If you only have the 1 or none, then like you haven't proven the fact that you're good. Like what's your opinion on that?
So the 3 things that you mentioned are absolute. They're things that I mentioned myself. I mean, you know, with a coach who's competed at a high level, the biggest thing about that is not that they've achieved great numbers, not that they've competed at a high level. It's more so that they have the experience going into competition. So when you're taking athletes into a world championship, you're taking athletes onto an invitational comp, you've had those experiences and you understand the mindset of the athlete stepping up onto that platform. And that for me is extremely valuable. The other 2 things you spoke of, academics, of course, and then the third one you mentioned was obviously the credibility of the people that you're coaching. It's not what you've done for yourself, but more so what you've done for people. Nobody cares if you're great and you've got shit athletes. But the biggest thing for me and the most important thing for a coach to have, and I mentioned just now, is the ability to communicate, because you can have a wealth of knowledge. You can be a great athlete, but if you're unable to communicate a simple cue to someone without using the terminology that you were taught at a university level when you were studying human movement, if you're unable to communicate that to Joe from accounts, you've got a problem. There's a barrier. And, you know, understanding that different people have different needs and not everyone's going to respond to the same cue. Communication is the most vital ingredient to being a good coach. And again, to bring him up against Sebastian Arab, obviously I'm going to be his biggest fan. He's been training me for 6 years, but he has an incredible ability to communicate. And if you watch any of his video tutorials, he explains things in such a simple format. It's easy for you to put that into practice, where there's a lot of incredible coaches out there, but they don't have the ability to communicate. So again, you can be a really good communicator and not have great knowledge and still be able to give really good cues. Yes. So communication is everything.
I've always said, there's that saying, if you can't explain it to a child, you don't understand well enough. Like, it needs to be like concise and simple.
Yeah.
On the tangent of coaches, though, my coach, a good friend of yours, had a question he wanted to ask you.
This one. Let me hear it, David.
Are you depressed that you are still fatter than David and not as pretty?
This is an ongoing thing. You know, he is the most beautiful athlete we have on our platforms. It's a contest that's ever going. You know, I have done a shitload of aesthetic work and I will never meet his standards. So yes, depression. I mean, I'm trying to tap into mental health now and helping people with mental health purely because my mental health is deteriorated by the competition between David and I.
I mean, you are going against a demigod, so I don't blame you for losing that one. I mean, you had no chance.
It's impossible. It's impossible to go up against it.
Samuel would like to know, is it better, like, why is it better training athletes who have beards, and why are they just amazing?
Sam, you know what the truth behind a beard is? Really, there's so much strength put into their beards and often not as much effort put into their work. So that beard is what's containing all of their strength.
I always say, like, have you heard of Samson from the Bible? I'm telling you, the hair makes a diff.
It makes a difference. Look, if most of the strongest men in the world have beards, I definitely need to start doing some work because there must be some secret powers in there.
Some transplants might do the work. It might not be like authentic, but it might give you at least like 0.5% more, you know, a little something. You have Zane Wilson, actual serious question now. How do you manage to command the type of respect that you have with your lifters? Like, what's your secret there? Any tools, tricks, or tips?
I think, you know, building trust with an athlete is one of the most important things that you can do. You need to respect them enough to give their opinions and questions within the sport and within the realm of coaching. Allow them to understand why things may not always work. And then also, I think a mistake a lot of trainers make is that when someone questions something, they don't demand enough authority from it. You know, you've come to me because I'm a professional and I have experience. So trust that I know what I'm doing. I appreciate your opinion, but this is my playground. This is the work I do. Trust me. And it's in time, you know, I think the mistake a lot of athletes make, and I see it more locally than I see anywhere else in the world, is that, you know, after a couple of months, they don't see their totals going up. So they change coaches. They join the next coach, total doesn't go up, so they change coaches. You need to be able to invest in the long term. I would never have the success I have if I hadn't been with Sebastian for 6 years. You need to trust that it takes time for a coach to learn about your strengths, your weaknesses, your stresses, your home life. You need to build those relationships with an athlete before you can really start expecting any results from a coach. And I think that I have that respect of my athletes because I put a lot more into them than just their sports. You know, we have very strong personal relationships. I know what's going on in every aspect of their lives. And like I said, it's a big part of coaching.
No, and I find that's one aspect of the coaching that these 1 year certificate sudden expert coaches don't quite grasp as well. It's not just about the numbers. Like, sometimes you're working with an entire individual here, and there'll be different variables, different cues that's going to work for them, different reasons why certain programs aren't going to work for them. So it's just being able to invest holistically in who you're working with as a person. I think that is the best recipe for success, and any coach worth their salt is going to realize that.
Yeah, and you earn your respect from them once they start seeing the results that they're getting from you in itself. Again, the work speaks for itself.
That is 100%. That's 100%. I want to close with a comment that Nessie wanted to give you. She says that you are one of the top female athletes in the country, and you could step onto a Miss World stage too. which I'll second. I'll second. You're what's Robert Obrist's thing? Strong and pretty.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think like a lot of people also view powerlifting as the sport that's, you know, can take your beauty and your grace away from you as a woman, but strength is only going to add to that. You know, we don't lose our sensitivity as women. You're not going to lose your beauty. I think I've put enough proof into the fact that I've competed at 52 kgs for 8 years now, and I've added 100 kilos to my total. You know, I haven't changed my physique all that much. So when it comes to powerlifting, you don't have to have that expectation of it. You know, you can keep your beauty as a woman.
And I find like you and females like you are great examples of that, because I've always had a passion for training, especially like females from like a ground zero level. I've always resented the fact that they back when I was coming up, they always thought that, oh, if I touch a barbell, I'm gonna get in like this Olga from Siberia type body, and I'm gonna have a huge husky voice and traps up to my ears. And I'm like, you don't understand the beauty that your body is capable of by getting stronger. You're not gonna suddenly build. I've always said, like, listen, I've worked very hard for almost a decade to look as average as I do now. You're not going to get super muscular by mistake overnight. It's just not happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
No, so listen, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on. Like, I didn't tackle like half the stuff I wanted to talk to you about, so I'd love to have you on again. But are there any closing remarks you'd love to give?
No, just, you know, it's important for us who do have some voice in the sport to just constantly grow and do the work like you're doing right now. You know, offering this podcast to strength sports in South Africa is so valuable, and we just need to continue doing the work that we're doing so that we can grow the sport and just educate people and keep this going. I want to see South African athletes on international platforms going forward every year nonstop. So Edgar, yeah, thanks to you, man. Thanks for just bringing us South African coaches a little bit more voice.
Listen. It's coaches like you who inspired me to be in the position I'm in now. So actually, thank you, and thank you to all the viewers who actually make this thing possible. You've been absolutely amazing. I'd love to have you on real soon. And to everyone watching, thank you for watching and tuning in, and we will see you in the next one.